Welcome to Healing Rain. I'm Sue Detweiler, and this show is for you if you desire healing, hope, and freedom in your life. Well, I truly believe that you have the power to change history by changing one life at a time. And that's exactly what Zahara McCoy does with her nonprofit that she's leading called Children of Grace, based out of Uganda. Well, today on Healing Rain, I have Zahara McCoy with me. Welcome to Healing Rain.
Thank you so very much, Sue. Thanks for having me. What an honor to be here with you.
Well, I love it that you have an international background, being born in Uganda. And talk with me, what has your healing journey been like?
Yes, I'll take you back. So, as you've shared with everyone here, it has been such a journey. I'll go back to being born in Uganda and being raised up until the age of 10. I would say life was not very easy in Uganda. If you've been to Uganda, you know the incredible difficulties and challenges people face day to day. But at age 7, I lost my father. And my mother became the primary breadwinner of our family. She was beautiful. She was strong. She was out there really making it work. And at age 8, I discovered she was HIV positive. That time, really, that meant a death sentence. So she pulled all types of things to try and make sure she gets on some medication. At that time, there was no PEPFAR yet.
Wow.
Purchasing those medications required you draining every ounce of every dollar, in this case, shilling.
Mm,
So we dropped out of
mm,
school, my brothers and I. They were taken up by their uncles. I remained behind. And little by little, she tried to stay alive for me and for my brothers up until the time when she couldn't anymore. As soon as she couldn't afford those drugs anymore, she slowly deteriorated. And if you guys are close to what the HIV pandemic did to Africa, you will know that this
mm,
most
mm,
beautiful, incredible, confident woman started deteriorating right before my eyes at age
mm,
10.
mm.
The roles were reversed at that time.
Wow.
Started
Mm,
taking care of her, healing her, and then she eventually passed on at
mm, mm,
in 2000 actually.
mm, mm.
That's where my entire world just crumbled.
Yeah. It's been so devastating in Africa, and how truthfully women and children have suffered the most from
Mhm.
the HIV outbreak.
Yes.
And it's so many innocent people have died.
Mhm.
Um, and so did she have I imagine the desperation in your mother as she was dying. Was there anything that she imparted to you as a child as she was passing?
You know, it was more in her being, her doing. It was more action than even a message. But one of the things I want to point out too is my mother was a dedicated Christian woman. In all
Mm-hmm.
these difficulties, as she was battling this horrendous disease, we would go to overnight prayer in church. So the number one thing to me that I believe, I don't even think she knew subconsciously she was doing
Mm-hmm.
this for me, was to start that personal relationship with Christ. So that later on, when she's gone to see her creator, I to this day remember those evenings where we would go and lay at the feet of
Yeah.
Christ. She instilled
Yeah.
my faith and
Yeah.
that onto me.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have so many intercessors. I'm so grateful as I travel. And one of the things I've learned is that I press into African leaders, different nations, uh, because there's a battle in these different nations that you face. And Christians understand the power of prayer and often understand the power of night prayer.
Yes.
Um, and many times people will say that the US, it's like we're asleep at the wheel in terms
Mhm.
of the fight. of what it means to be a Christian and live your faith around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I would say even so, when you're in those destitute moments, you press in. It becomes less about the worldly needs and gains and accomplishments to when you really are in the survival mode and only can
Mhm,
turn to the one and only,
mhm,
the high priest. So I
mhm,
can't help but make those connections that it's funny. People say,
mhm,
we go to Africa, the kids are so joyous. Well, maybe they are in fact very joyous in the midst of all that's happening around them, but maybe they're also really dedicating and understanding the fundamentals of having faith and holding out
mhm,
hope and praying and weeping and really
mhm,
getting in touch with who God made you, because even in those hardest times, he reveals himself to us. That's where he finds us. So
mhm,
it's not a
mhm,
coincidence. It's not by coincidence that kids are joyous in Uganda. It's he who makes
mhm,
that
mhm,
possible when we are so down and under.
mhm.
Mhm.
I remember during COVID, some Ugandan pastors, a pastoral group, found me online. I'm not even sure how they found me, but I began to do online trainings for this group of pastors and leaders that pastor different churches in Uganda. And I taught on healing,
Mhm.
body, mind, and heart. And there was so much faith that was released that these pastors went out, they asked for my notes. They went out and they preached on healing, and they began to see the physical manifestation of healing
Yes.
in different villages.
Yeah.
And the truth is that the gatherings became so large that the police threw five of the pastors in jail, and they rejoiced, and their churches grew larger, and they were released without any problem. uh, and I think in the United States we don't even understand those things. um, but when I think about your mother and the final healing that she faced, because the
Mhm.
reality is she went to heaven,
Mhm.
and her savior said, "Well done, good and faithful
Hallelujah.
servant, enter into the joy of the Lord." And the reality is your mom, like all of us, will receive heavenly bodies,
Mhm.
and every tear is wiped away. And so to believe in God's healing doesn't stop when death happens. Because death is really, for Christians, the final healing. It's the promotion.
Yes.
Um, it's the entering into a fullness that we don't know here on earth. But the
Hmm.
loss and the pain comes for those of us that are left behind.
Yeah.
So, did you feel at that point, was there bitterness in your heart, or did the hope of heaven sustain you?
Certainly, as a child, they say children have a faith so much deeper than adults. That time, I often tell people I didn't grieve the typical way when my mother passed. I didn't weep at the funeral. Instead, it was this overcome of relief that she's gone on to the next place.
And
Her
she wasn't in pain.
She was not in pain anymore, right? That
Yeah.
to me was such a relief. And to have that, the fear actually for me came from what next? What's going to happen to me in this broken world? That's where the
Yes.
fear slipped in. It's almost like I understood God, you're with her, you got her. To now, oh, what's next for me here as a 10-year-old? Because the environment we grew up in is broken, deeply, deeply broken. And
Yes.
me being the only girl, me seeing friends of mine who've also lost their mothers and fathers to HIV AIDS, I know I almost had an inkling on what's gonna happen next for me. Is gonna be early childhood marriage. It's gonna be
Mm.
maid.
Oh.
It's gonna be no school.
Ah.
We
Mm,
really lived in, I called it, I later on moved in with my aunt, and we lived in scarcity. We had no idea where our next meal would come from. We went
mm,
hungry for 2 days.
mm,
I shared, excuse me, I had to share clothes and underwear with my cousins. Everything was in scraps, but I
mhm,
never thought about those material things. I just kept weeping to God every night. Help me. I need a future, one that's glorifying you, one that's transformative from where I am. Make me somebody in this world. Those
mhm,
were the prayers I remember at 10 years old.
mhm,
And I cried out to him for about 6 months.
mm,
6 months.
mm,
There came through a breakthrough. He heard this little nothing girl out there and
mm,
turned my prayers into reality.
mhm. He heard a, a child of faith, a beautiful, a beautiful developing Christian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He didn't hear the sound of no one, although
Mm.
people around you might think that.
Mm.
He knows that in Uganda right now, those young children that are in the same situation you are, the reality is they're still his favorite. I don't know how he does it, but every one of us that have been created by the hands of God, which that's all of us as human beings, we are God's favorite. No matter what condition we are living in.
Mhm.
And you tapped into the favor of God because you sought the Father.
Yes.
So, talk about that breakthrough because I know it was life changing. How did the breakthrough come?
So I look back now and I look from the eyes of a grown adult here. But at the time, it's so essential to understand that we as human are living a very special spiritual experience because God grants us the ability to use us. Yes, it's
Yeah, he
him, but he
does.
uses us. He didn't come down from the heavens and reach his little Zahara. He used another incredibly beautiful human being to come from me. Okay. I want to make that very clear. So I was there, I'd prayed for 6 months, and there, behold, the day comes. Someone shows up at the doorsteps of my aunt's house, knocks, and they say, "Is this the home where Zahara stays?" My aunt said, "Yes." They said, "We're here to inform Zahara that she now has a sponsor." What I didn't share with you prior to that, when my mother was very sickly, it was such a common thing that people were grasping at every opportunity to find plans or ways their kids could be safe or somebody who would look after them. So plans were
Mhm,
being made. For me, it happened to be at the little school, local school that was very dilapidated, where strangers came to our school and said, there are people out there, in America who would like to sponsor children who are orphans. And because we are so much in despair and fear, what's the next step? I enlisted my name that day. Forgotten about it completely for now a year, 6 months. And they come at the doorstep of my aunt and they were bringing me the good news that now I have a sponsor. God
mhm,
used a complete stranger
mhm,
to say,
mhm,
I heard your cries, Zahara.
mhm,
And from that day on, I still get very teary-eyed, but from that day on,
mhm,
he showed how merciful and
mhm,
how gracious and how important that I am to him. To
mhm,
today, I don't know how he did it, but he absolutely came in the depths of the pits of the
mhm,
darkness I was laying in, and he grabbed me by the hand and said, rise up, my child. Through an individual who had
mhm,
zero idea who I was.
mhm.
Very, very incredible.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm very, very familiar with sponsorship programs in multiple nations. And the reality is, when that sponsorship came, it not only impacted you, it impacted your whole household. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. The sponsorship came packaged with everything I needed. School fees, of course, the school supplies. And remember, this is a communal uh, type style of raising children. So everything that's mine, remember, I shared underwear with my cousin. So everything that's now mine
Mhm,
is ours. Where my cousins would
mhm,
go to school with very little to nothing, now they also had books, pencils, pens,
mhm,
and I
mhm,
would prepare them to go to school, but we would together go to school. It was a collective
mhm,
effort and uplifting of a family. And from us,
mhm,
it became a community. This is generational transformation. God didn't use that one person to just alleviate me and save me or rescue me. He absolutely took my entire household that I was living in, and then, of course, the community, and grew it from something that was absolutely no hope, no future, to something that we all are very now proud of. And not only did he sponsor me, he spoke through this individual to a point where they came and wanted to see where their money went, got to know me. And it's incredible. I talked to my mother now, and she said, everything about you screamed that you needed love.
mhm,
Sponsorship was not about school fees. It was not
mhm,
about supplies, scholastic materials. It was loving this whole child holistically,
mhm.
unconditionally. It was a prayer answered.
Well, I believe that God's using you today to bring an awareness. And I know I have more of an awareness as I've been in multiple nations where and I will be in very wealthy homes in multiple nations, but also I have walked through the slums. I
Hmm.
have walked through what's really, in some places open sewers if the rain is running. And I've walked across boards and I've walked into tiny tin shacks with a hole in the ground for sewer and that you have to walk for water. Um, and so most people have not had that experience that I have had, but I know um, that the extremeness of the need, and yet how like God to highlight and to stop and to help the one.
Wow, that's incredibly great, Christian. What you do is, again, it's overwhelming when you see the disparities between the two. And to reconcile that to the human mind, it's incredibly difficult. We have to die to
Mhm,
oneself to rise
mhm,
again as at the other, right? That's something that
mhm,
I've realized a lot of people in the US really trying to understand that. When you come from that, I've kind of lived two worlds now, and I'll share with you a little bit about after I was adopted. I came from that to the most one of the most affluent communities in California. It was a shock. Okay. It was a
mhm,
shock, but I also experienced things that were like, oh, I wish people here had this in a sense of community. I remember the first week I
mm,
arrived, I asked my mom, where
mhm,
are all your
mhm.
neighbors? She said, they're in their home, they keep to themselves because I was used to running
The
from,
suburbs.
yes,
Yes, yes.
things like that are so absolutely small, but to the human experience, it's such a joyous way to grow up in. So really, disattaching ourselves to comfort and start looking into what is God really calling me to do and be in this world. To me, that is where it hits. It hits the question when you go to church, when you serve in church, when you connect with your neighbor, you start to break down those barriers of the overwhelmingness of all the world issues, right? And for
Mhm.
us Christians, we are even given opportunities to go on mission trips. You start to get small
Mhm.
exposures. I believe my world turned around altogether for me to not talk about being rescued from something, but for something. The world and
Mhm.
experience I was able to be granted in the US, I see so much advantage and comfort and blessings and generosity in the world here. Like I really pick from that. I cannot tell you how generous Americans are. But I also see the other side of things in Uganda, and I say, wow, if only people knew, if only people knew how a small increment gesture, right? Gift of love,
Mhm.
what that could mean to
Mhm.
a child.
Mhm.
God
Mhm.
never said there'll be no, no trouble. It'll be all rosy in this world. He said, he did not say
Mhm.
that. We all experience hardship in our lives. Even in places like this where there's abundance, there's still the human spirit that's always at, a conflict with each
Mhm.
other. And
Mhm.
when we stop and think and say, he said there will be no trouble in the world, but I have overcome the
Mhm.
world.
The world.
That is the verse that I grasp onto every time I feel distracted,
Mhm.
it's too noisy, there's too much going on in the
Mhm.
world. Yes, there will be troubles and tribulations, but I have overcome. And the way he does that is by giving us signposts. The signposts could be
Mhm.
that little girl yearning for your love, screaming to be loved. That little
Mhm.
girl that just wants to be seen.
Mhm.
He's using you to turn her pain into
Mhm.
purpose.
Mhm.
I'm the living testimony of that, Sue.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm I'm passionate, and in fact LifeBridge Global's model is helping you change the world one life at a time. And I believe that when we can break it down and begin to help the one,
Mm,
um, it breaks inertia, and it
mm,
begins to move us forward, where we begin to step into Ephesians 3:20, the far more than we can hope for or imagine. And
mhm,
we can't hope for or imagine whenever we get stuck in materialism or we get stuck in any of the world systems. But
yeah.
we step into the far more than we can hope for or imagine when we step into God's dream for our lives. And
Mm,
God's dream for our lives is always about helping others. It always, in every uniqueness of what we do or what we say, it's about changing the world one life at a time. So I know that's something that you do in your nonprofit, that you help make global connections so that people are able to change one life at a time. Can you tell us about that?
absolutely. The organization I work for is Children of Grace, and it's in Jinja, Uganda, a little town in Jinja. It's incredible. It's been full circle for me. As I shared, I put my name on a list with this organization. 6 months later, I was sponsored, brought to the US, adopted to that life. And the moment though I left Uganda, I'll never forget this. Everything was very brand new. Getting on the aircraft was new. Every single little thing was very brand new. And I remember thinking, gosh, where am I going? What am I? And a settling voice came over me and said, Zahara, you'll be back home someday.
Mm,
Oh,
mm,
fast forward. I came here, I felt guilty. I felt, why me? The why me question kept coming up. Remember, God taps into your
mhm, mhm,
subconscious. He uses the heart. He always uses the heart, never the
mhm.
head, the heart. And it was a why me? I'm not special. I'm not anything like this. So why me, Lord? Out of all the 24 million children in Uganda, me? So it kept tugging at me. I grew up, went to college. And at that time, this organization was my mother's. She's the founder, Marianne McCoy. And she'll come back to me as far as cultural impact and issues that were going on. We would tag team it. I'll help resolve some of that stuff. But in my heart of hearts, I knew the why me question was there. I was going the other direction. I couldn't really quite grasp how does returning back home mean? Where do you start from? Life was becoming very comfortable here, to be honest. Long and behold, one year I go back to Uganda and I found a little girl, 2 years old, had just lost her mother, and she grabbed me by the hand and walked me to the tombstone of our mom. And everything came back to me like it was
Mhm.
yesterday. It was like God was telling me,
Mhm.
Zahara, basically it was reminding me, I told you you'll be back home someday. Now you are. And
Mhm.
from that day on, I came back, started talking about children of grace, not from a standpoint of being a beneficiary, but to explaining to people what children of grace does for the children like me. I was rescued from there, and there's also these other children, what can we do collectively? Not just I, but what can we do to impact not one, not two, not three, but God's children and break the chains of poverty from them and help heal in their healing process and ask God to make it right what's broken within Africa. So I started just equipping myself with all I can to start leading this organization into the new era where it's really harnessing the children who are on ground that experience day-to-day poverty, disease, and trying to get one child at a time rescued from that, restored and transformed so that they can become the next generation of leaders in Uganda. We have about 800 in the program currently, but I've had over 20,000 come through the program. And the reason I took leadership in this because I found that it's so valuable to have what we call 24/7 discipleship in the children who are going through suffering like I was. So Children of Grace has a unique mentorship model where each child is assigned to an adult who walks life on life with them. As you go to school, are you there? Are you well? Are you spiritually developing? Are you nurtured as far as the nutrition goes? If something is going on at home, what is it? How can we impart in that? It's a holistic way of seeing, and I mean the word, when I say seeing, I mean seeing this child for what God intended them to be. It's been a
Mhm.
full circle for me. I really
Mhm.
oftentimes, when it comes to decision making, I sit down and I think of the child back in Miko village where I come from and
Mhm.
say to God, where do you want her life to go? And how
Mhm.
can we participate in that?
Mhm.
That's the gist of what Children of Grace does.
That is so beautiful. I think of I study theology, so I'm thinking of the Greek word katalambano, and what it means essence is to see, but also to seize with the mind. And it's used in Philippians 3 where Paul talks about lay hold of what
Mhm.
Christ has laid hold of me.
Mhm.
And one of the things I think that's happening today for Healing Rain listeners is that you're seeing something, God's highlighting something in order for you to seize, take hold of with your mind, lay
Mhm.
hold of purposes for your life. And the question becomes, how can you change one life at a time? What's the light on the next step for you? Um, so as we close, Zahara, what do you want the Healing Rain listeners to know in case they want to get involved in helping children of grace?
I would like to leave them with a message. I love this saying because it just captivates the entire gist of what I just shared with you all. Is that no single raindrop was ever responsible for a storm. When we sit in
Mm,
our homes where we're so comfortable, we're so loved with our families, just think that there is somebody out there who does not have that. The minimum, the basic minimums are not available to them. And when you start to think about that, think about, well, what is that one raindrop means to me? I'm going to go back to it. It uses people to see people.
mm,
So the small gesture could be, I want to go to Uganda. I want to reach out to Zahara. I want to say hello to my neighbor. But most definitely, if you feel called to this ministry, Tune of
mhm,
Grace, start with going to the website, read about what we do, connect to a child,
mhm,
look at their face, look at their beautiful,
mhm,
God designed face, and understand
mhm,
that's your one.
mhm.
Yes.
That's so beautiful. And I look forward to it. I look forward to and am making plans to be in Uganda in May this year. And so I'm looking forward to that. And I pray over you as a Healing Rain listener. Respond as the Holy Spirit leads you.
Mm-hmm.
And even the power of prayer, I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't say even, the power of prayer is a beginning place.
Yes.
And uh, I have seen moms that have not had much, but they get a vision for world missions. And
Mm-hmm.
then I've seen God give them ideas of how to garner money. I've seen people do garage sales for missions and car washes. And I mean, the reality is God's so creative.
Yes.
So the first thing to do is to any objection that's in your mind, just block it out and ask God, what's the light on the step? What is God calling me to do so
Mhm.
that I can be a part of changing the world one life at a time?
My name is Zahara, and this is my story and the beginning of Children of Grace. Life doesn't always go as planned. I was happy as a child, but at a young age, I was forced to grow up fast. I remember my mom working very hard to provide for us. But I also remember a time when, slowly by slowly, my mom would work less and less, lying in bed more and more. Nobody was talking about it, and I had no idea what was happening. But something didn't seem right. I remember one day at school, I saw people signing up some of my friends whose parents had just died of AIDS. They were offering to help them with school fees since their parents weren't around anymore. My friends were now orphans. I remember being scared, thinking, was my mom dying? Was I going to be an orphan? She was still alive, but I was scared. I didn't sign up that day. The next day, I started thinking some more. What if my mom dies? What's going to happen to me? I decided I needed to get on that list. But the people signing children up had moved on. I started to panic. I need to find them in case my mom died. So all by myself, I started walking and walking. I ended up walking 14 miles that day. I eventually found them. Little did I know that that very walk would change the direction of my life. Life certainly didn't go as planned. See, my mom did end up dying from AIDS. Losing my mom was hard, but because I had a sponsor, I was able to finish my education, which gave me a great shot at life. And the cool thing is, my sponsor also became my new mom.